Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this video is a web component styling masterclass. The point of this video is to show you different ways to style your web components, so that way you can do cool stuff with your web components. Okay, so I'm going to create a folder here, web components. I'm going to create a new folder in there, project 1, and in there we're going to create some files, a new file, index.html, and a new file, app.js. So I'm going to set up my boilerplate. I always just like do the whole setup so you guys can see the whole setup, especially for those of you who are newer. It just helps you kind of get all that to gel, and that's why I also leave all my mistakes and errors in the video so you can see me troubleshoot, and the idea is to kind of learn from the whole sort of experience. Document. Okay, so I want to include a script tag linking to that app.js, and that should be good. Okay, app.js. What we're going to do is just create a very basic web component. Okay, class hello world, always kind of the easiest one to make. Class hello world extends HTML element. That's the class that allows us to create web components. Then we need a constructor so we can start building it out. We're going to call the parent constructor first before we do anything else. And now we can start making things happen. Now when it comes to styling a web component, if you don't use a shadow DOM, it'll just be styled with your normal CSS style sheet. But all the cool stuff happens once you have a shadow DOM. Again, a shadow DOM is its kind of own little mini DOM, and the problem is your style sheet won't be able to style it. Okay? It's kind of its own little world. So there's a couple ways you can do it. Now, first method is let's just create the component. So let's see here. The easiest way to just add a template in there is just to go this dot inner HTML. This dot inner HTML. No, not dot this dot inner. First we have to create the shadow root or the shadow DOM. So to do that, we do this dot attach shadow, and you have to include a mode. And you want it to be open. There's no reason to ever want it closed. Okay, so just that's always going to be what you put in there. I'm yet to read anything that's given any kind of decent reason to have a closed shadow. So this dot attach shadow, and now that we have a shadow root, we're going to dictate the template all through the shadow root. So instead of document dot, we're going to do this dot shadow root, which refers to the shadow root of this particular element, and say dot inner HTML, and we'll just do something really basic. H1 hello world. Okay, and that's it. So there's our component, and now we just have to define it. So that way it's attached to our custom elements registry dot define. So we're creating an element called hello world. That's going to be the HTML tag, and we're attaching it to this hello world class. Cool. Okay, now let's actually try using it. So we're going to put in our HTML hello world. Okay, so there we have it. Save. Okay, and now let's open this up in live server. Okay, so right now it's not appearing yet. So let's take a look. Actually, let's take a look in the here, because we should get there we go. Fail to execute attach shadow on element. The provided value function open. It's not a valid enum value. Oh, I must have done something wrong there. Let's take a look. Oh, it's supposed to be a string. My bad. There we go. And see, now it's working. Hello world. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a global style sheet. So I'm going to create a new file in here, just to show you that the styles shouldn't be applying to this. So we're going to have a global style sheet, global.css. I'm going to attach that to my HTML. Link CSS global.css. Okay, and we're gonna say in that CSS file that H1s should be the color red. And let's see if it takes. It might. It shouldn't. Yep, it doesn't. Because again, your global styles should not apply to anything within a shadow DOM. The shadow DOM kind of protects them from the outside world. So what we could do is we could create a component specific style sheet, a new file. So we'll just call this hw.css. And then what I could do is if I go back to my component, is before this h1, I can create a link tag. So link, actually I'll just copy the one from the index.html. Just give it its own link tag. And instead connect the HWCSS. This is one way to style it. The only problem with this is that there's no guarantee that the CS. You have to make sure that the person who uses your components includes their CSS file with all their other files. So it's just another file to keep track of. But you can do that. So in here, H1 color green. So we know if it's gathering from this style sheet, it's going to be green. Okay, still not taking yet. So let's examine. Let's see here. Relative style sheet, href homework.css. See if we do it this way, /homework CSS. And now it works. Good. Okay, so it needs a relative file path. Hello world CSS. Okay, so you could use your own custom style sheet for that component, but that requires you to have a secondary file. You could also have your own style tag, which I could just put the style tag in there. What I usually like to do, because I think it's just a little bit more organized, is that I'll create a separate variable. So I'll do something like this.style equals, and then I'll use another backticks, and then I'll just create a style tag here. Okay. So then here, I can be like H1 color purple. Now that doesn't really do anything yet, but then what I do is that over here in the main template where I set the inner HTML, this is why I like using backticks, I'll just interpolate it. Okay? This just makes it where, you know, it doesn't get too cluttered in one block of code. Okay, so I can see I set the style to this, you know, just set my little pieces. Cool. Now let's head back to here. And we got a little fail to connect the construct element. The result must not have attributes. Let me see here, style. That style, H1. Color purple, that's fine. I think it's the way, I think it's the spacing. Let's just keep that one line. Go back to the HTML. See here, this.style, so you end up with this H1 color purple. That should be fine. Refresh the page. DOM exception failed. While to construct custom element, the result must not have attributes. What attributes did we define here? This.style. Okay, for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to copy this right in there. Cut. Can't interpolate stuff. I've done it all the time. I'm just not sure what's complaining about at the moment. So I'm just going to copy that HTML right in there. So it's that color purple. H1. Yeah, that's the correct syntax. And see, it works. So you can do a style tag right in your template. Okay, cool. So that's one way to do it. Now the problem with that, well, that allows you to style it within the DOM. What if you're creating a component for somebody else and you want them to style the color for the H1? There's nothing they can do in their global style sheet file as a specific style to style that H1. But what you can do is you could set a property. So I could do this. I could do var, use custom properties and do this, like cut var H1 color. Okay, that'll be the custom property that's set for it. And see, it's black now, but now if I go back to my global.css, because that's still being read on this file that's using the component, I can go in there and I'll go to root, create a root selector, and then here we'll just define H1 color, and we can define that as orange, and that should be able to bleed through. Did it? Yep. And there you go. See, it bled through. So I can put in little placeholder variables in my CSS for my component, and that allows somebody who's using my component to specify those specific styling values. So that's one thing you can do. Okay, that's a thing you can do. Another thing you can do, okay, so let me just get rid of the style tag altogether. You can create a property on the elements in there and say part, if I'm right, say part H1, okay, and that's going to allow outside style sheets to specify the part that it's referring to. Okay, this is sort of a newer cutting edge feature. So let's try that out. So it should be like part. Okay, then you specify the part. It's called H1 because that's what we called it. And then we do a style, and then we'll do color, dark magenta. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so what it's going to do, this will pierce through the shadow DOM, look for a part called H1 in the shadow DOM, and it should style it. And it does. Okay, so you can give your different elements parts to allow the outside to style it. So you can style it from within, but then you can use parts to override those styles. Cool. Okay, and that's sort of one last piece. So now you can now you know how the custom style stuff that's going on in your shadow DOM, but sometimes you have kind of a weird situation. Okay, just get my bearings here. You might have what's called a slot. Okay, so let me do this. Let's create an H1. Then we're going to create a slot. Okay, and we'll give the slot pretty sure you give it a name. We'll give it a name above. Okay, and then I'll put another H1. And we'll say this is part of the template still. So this H1 is still part of the template. And then I'm just going to create a slot with no name. Okay, cool. So slots allow you to use children in your template. Okay, but you have to have a shadow DOM, otherwise they don't work. But this presents a new styling problem. Okay, so let's see here. Let's give this some children. And let's just make sure that the rest of this template. So there we go. Hello world, part of the template. They're both showing up. That works. Okay. Let's give this some children. What if I just put in an H3 that says, I am a child? Where's it going to show up? We have two slots. My guess is that it's going to show up in the slot that doesn't have a name. Okay? Which means it would be below part of the template instead of above part of the template. So let's double check. I am correct. It shows up in the slot without a name. Now, if I wanted it to show up in the slot with a particular name, Then I would do here, I would type in slot equals above, I think is what I called it. Let me just double check. Yep, we called it above. So now it's gonna look for a slot that has an above name, and see now it's above part of the template. Okay, so that's kind of how slots work. They're a great way to inject sort of more information into your, or make it just even more usable to make your web components super cool. But the thing is that these are not part of your shadow DOM, so they can't be styled by your shadow DOM directly. Okay, I can't make a style inside my style tag that's going to refer to this, but I want to style this from within the shadow DOM. So how would I do that? Okay, what you have to do is we have to go back to our style sheet. So right now I took out the style tags, so let me add those back. Style. Okay, and then basically what we can do is that we have to create a style called slotted, and that's going to have 2 colons, colon slotted, and in this parentheses you put what it is that you're styling. Okay, now if I want to style just any children, it would just be that. Okay, that just means style any top level children. Okay, not the children of the children, but just the top level children. You can't style the children of the children in this manner. I mean, I guess you might be able to do like slotted and then do like a child selector. We'll try that out. I don't know if that'll work, but we'll try it out. Okay, so slotted anything, we'll see that it works. We'll say, and then we'll create a style, and we'll say color brown. Okay, color brown. So this will style the slotted element brown, and see now it's brown. Okay, so even though that's not in the shadow DOM, because if I go here to elements, you'll see the shadow roots here, and you can see what's inside the shadow root. And there's a slot, the slots. The H3 that says I am a child is outside of that. It's actually part of the normal DOM, not within the shadow DOM. So if I collapse the shadow DOM, you'll see it's separate. But because of that slotted pseudo selector, I'm able to access slotted elements. Okay, now let's try something here. Okay, let me go back to the index.html. I'm going to put a div here, so that'll show up in the other slot, and in there is going to be an H3 that says cheese. Okay, and that's going to show up where we think it's going to show up. Okay, it styles the div, so by styling the div, it styles the contents of the div. So let's get specific. So let me go back to my here. Instead of styling the everything, let's style just the H3. So only the H3 will get styled. So see now only the H3 is styled. And let's do a quick experiment. So let's create another style. And let's try this. Slotted div. And let's talk about an H1 that is the child of that div. I think that's what I did. H3, that's a child of that div. And notice I didn't style the other H3, because even though the H3 is inside, where's my HTML? There's an H3 that's inside the div, it only styles the top level. Okay, so now when I specify the H3, it styled this, but not this. So that's, because before when you saw both change colors, it's because it was inheriting it from the div. Because slotted all only slots the top level. So now we're going to run an experiment, see if this is doable. Slotted div, and I want to style an H3 that is a child of a slotted div. And let's see if I can do it. Color red. And let's see if it makes that red. It does not. Okay, so you cannot style directly the children of a slotted element. Okay. Okay, so now we know. You can see we tried to grab the slotted div. Now could I do this? Could I style the slotted div directly? I could do that. This should work. And that does work. And then the children inherit the styles from the parent. That's fine. So again, it's limited as to what you can do with how deep those slots go. Okay, so In that case, what you may want to do is make components in components, so that way, the number of children any slotted elements don't go so deep that you're running into that problem. Cool. So that's how you would style slotted elements. And I think we've kind of gone over. So just to kind of recap, you could link your own individual style sheet. You could create your own style tags in the template. If you want to give access to the outside world, you could use custom properties to do so. And you can use this slotted pseudo selector in order to style slotted elements, but only at the top level. Okay, so you can't style grandchildren slotted elements, only the directly slotted element. You can use names to choose where different slotted elements appear in the template, and I think that's a pretty good overview of your options as far as how to use these, how to style your web component, and a good review of slots as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. My name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Have a great day and enjoy.